February 5th, 2016 edition of Colorado Inside Out Postgame, a special web exclusive production here on Channel 12. Let's get a quick take on the fact that we are firmly ensconced in the official primary season of the presidential year 2016, with Iowa now in the rearview mirror, to New Hampshire coming up. It's really the kickoff of some of the most fun that this table is going to have for the rest of this year. Patty Calhoun from Westward, we've seen Iowa, we're about to get New Hampshire, and then everything after that. What's some of the big issues that you're noticing so far?
Well, the fact that people still really love talking about Donald Trump. So I was at a dinner party the other night, and everyone was about ready to go home, and someone said, "What do you think about Trump?" I'm like, oh my God, you know it's going to be an hour-long conversation. You know, whether they love him, whether they hate him, everyone has an opinion about Donald Trump. So he has really increased the interest in this presidential campaign. However, after Iowa, where he didn't do as well as he thought, and then he actually brought up, I thought, a pretty legitimate point about what Ted Cruz had said about Ben Carson, and maybe had misrepresented the situation with Ben Carson. He's already dropped that. He's done with it, even if it was something bad Ted Cruz did. Donald Trump is moving on to another issue, which he would hope is winning in New Hampshire. If he doesn't if he doesn't win in New Hampshire, we're going to see just how long he wants to stay in a race. He doesn't like not winning. He doesn't like not having all the attention on him. And certainly the fact that Rubio is coming up strong is not something that is going to make Trump happy. It's going to cut conversations short at dinner parties, but we could be seeing maybe this campaign coming to an end if he doesn't do well in New Hampshire and in Carolina.
David Kopel from the Independence Institute and DU Law School. A lot of people, this table included, have thrown dirt on the Trump grave for a year and a half now, and he's still the top of conversation. But now that he's lost Iowa, is New Hampshire maybe not his Alamo, but is he closer to that Alamo than people thought? I mean, we went from thinking this is never going to happen to, oh my gosh, he's going to be the nominee. Is he now back in the middle of, give or take, whether his chances are?
No, he's not the prohibitive favorite, but he could easily, even if he doesn't win New Hampshire, he'd most likely come in second. And, you know, the state polls going further on have him doing well. I think there is a constituency he appeals to. It might have ultimately people thought, could he get 40%? Maybe not. But can he consistently get 25%? Or, if you say he loses the bandwagon effect, does that go down to 15 or 20? I think he can stay in this race as long as he wants, and he's going to, if he goes out without the nomination, it'll be in some kind of way he can portray himself as a winner. The thing Patty mentioned about Cruz, in essence, putting out bogus reports at the beginning of the caucus that Carson was dropping out. Trump only raised it for a day because he has a finite attention span. But the Cruz people want to just dismiss this as a Trumper tantrum. Their far more serious problem is Ben Carson is raising it. Ben is the victim. The whole theory of doing this was supposedly that the Carson voters, who were pretty religiously conservative, a lot of them, they want a good man, that Cruz would be their second choice. Well, if they've just seen, according to their guy, Ben Carson, Ted Cruz playing dirty tricks on him, that helps out Rubio or somebody else who the Carson voters might decide to go to if Carson doesn't continue on the campaign a lot further. And it is devastating to Cruz's persona, because his slogan is "Trust Ted." He's a hard-edged conservative ideologue, but he means what he says and he says what he means, and he's always super competent at everything, including organization. And this goes all against that, which is I could see him falling some in New Hampshire, and this is a real vulnerability to him, because the fact is, people call Rubio establishment. His voting record in the U.S. Senate is not very different from Ted Cruz's, and he was the Tea Party candidate who beat a Republican governor to get to the U.S. Senate. So there's a lot of people who could be Carson people, who, and Rubio is also quite authentically seriously religious. So I think he's got great upside potential, including with the Carson voters.
Eric Sonne, political analyst. Not since Lightning McQueen in the movie Cars have I seen someone take third place and look so much better at the end of the day. I guess someone said when we were watching on Monday night that I saw, I think it was a Twitter feed, someone said, I've watched my 5th victory speech so far tonight. And that's really what it felt like. You definitely saw that from Rubio, who did take third place, but it seemed that out of all the press coming out of Iowa, he is certainly the rosiest. What's your take?
Well, let's not forget who came in third place in Iowa 8 years ago on the Democratic side. Her name was Hillary Clinton, behind Barack Obama, behind John Edwards, and then she parlayed that after a few tears or two in some diner joint in New Hampshire to winning New Hampshire. So, there is a little bit of precedent here. Just a couple of points in playoff, both what David and Patty had to say. I think the biggest point for me is that the buildup of this race has been going on so long. We've been talking about this race dominated by the Trump conversation for so long, and finally we're actually having real voters being heard from in the caucuses last Monday, now in New Hampshire this Tuesday, and then it will start to roll from there. I find it a relief just to actually not be pontificating or hypothesizing, but actually to have voters chiming in and not always going as projected. Ask Donald Trump about that. It may be, we'll see over time, but it may be easier to tell a pollster in a fit of upset that I'm going to vote for Donald Trump than it is to actually check that box or pull that lever. That is a little more of a serious responsibility. Rubio does have the upside. I think, per David's point, it's going to be fascinating. The next Republican debate is tomorrow night. We record this on Friday, so Saturday night. I have to believe there are going to be some fireworks between Ben Carson and Ted Cruz. You can bank on that one. Lastly, to David's point about Trump, if Trump withers, or even if he just has a solid base of 25%, even round it up, make it 30%. When you're in a multi-candidate field, 10, 12, 14 candidates, even get rid of the ones who were never that serious or never that viable, 6 or 7 real candidates, 25% or 30% is the top dog. When you're in a 3-candidate race, the guy with 25 or 30% is the loser. So Trump not only has to hold what he has, he's going to have to grow what he has, as this field is very quickly going to narrow and winnow. There are going to be a bunch more candidates out of the race before this coming week is over.
Joey Bunch, political reporter over the Denver Post. Speaking of that last point that Eric mentioned, we saw some winnowing after Iowa, which are some folks that I think people even forgot were still in the race. Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee, people like that. Are we going to see a whole lot of other people drop out after New Hampshire?
I think so. There's people down at the bottom, but to Eric's point, I think Trump's got all the votes he's going to get, and he's not going to be in this race that long. And when he's out, maybe they'll start talking about issues, because all we've talked about so far is personality. The problems that Ben Carson had with, whether he tried to stab some guy or whether he, was in a chicken restaurant, and that's all about personality, and that's what we've heard so far. We haven't heard a lot of details, and I think voters are the sense that I get is that voters are ready to hear what they're going to do. If you're going to repeal Obamacare, let's start talking about what you're going to replace it with, and let's vote on that. Let's vote on issues. So, when we get this field down to a manageable size, we can start talking about what these guys are going to do as president, rather than what kind of, how good they are for Fox News ratings.
That's a good point. That's all the time we have for Colorado Inside Out postgame this week. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think. For everyone here at CPT12.org, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thanks very much for watching.